Hi, everyone. It's Candace Krog Goldman, and this is another episode of Quantum Realms 2022. And I say this about all my guests. I'm excited to have them there, but I'm really excited to have these two people here. And why is that? Because they're new to our community, and also they're new to me, and they're new to me because of what they bring to the world, Qigong. And who am I talking about? This is Chris and Parisa Shelton, and they are husband and wife team helping to uplift humanity. And they are creators of the Qi Club, which I'm a member of, and the Qigong teacher training. And we're going to talk about all of that today. Welcome, Chris and Parisa.
Well,
Hello.
Hi there. Yeah, thank you for having us on your show.
Yeah, I truly, I was a little nervous to ask if you might come and speak with me today for our event, but I already knew you would, and I'm gonna start with, if it's okay,
Yes.
how I found you.
Oh, please
Okay,
do.
yes.
So there's a few things going on always in all of our lives, right? And for me, I have this niggling kind of physical challenge that's just been sort of talking to me. And I talk a lot to my teacher, Dolores, in my mind, if you were, or channel her if you would rather think of it that way, or simply imagine it, if that's another way of looking at it. And she's often talked about, Dolores Cannon has talked about everything being energy. And she's talked a lot to me ever since I met her, which is back now, 2008 is when I first met her, became aware of her, and then she passed in 2014. But after she passed, it's like she was in my head even more, and we kind of have some running dialogue. And so I was kind of thinking about her, about my own clients, but my own issue as well, and about the energy thing. And she was like, you just really need just to move that energy. and I'd had an interest in Qigong, but I'd really never done anything. And she was like, well, I'll just help you find the right person and the right. I looked at only one YouTube, and that was yours, Chris. And I mean, like that day, within minutes, I signed up for your Qi Club, even though I didn't even really know what it was, because of Dolores, who sits even metaphorically over my right shoulder. And she was just all about, she was like, they're going to be perfect for you. Oh. And then it's been great. And I've enjoyed all of that with you. And then I found out other things that made it even more interesting. But thank you for coming today. And I want to know about your story. I want to know, Chris, how you found Qigong. I only know the tiniest bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I really want to know how you two found each other, if you don't mind sharing that. And then, of course, what you offer the world. So take it away, Chris. How did you get started in Qigong?
So I grew up in a dysfunctional home. There was abuse and neglect. I started doing drugs at age 12, speedballs at age 12. I was highly driven and motivated, though. Normally people that do drugs, they drop out of school. My older half brother was in trouble with the law all the time. And that was the one thing I didn't want to be. I didn't want to become like him. So there's a driving force not to end up in juvie or the boys ranch or whatever, And so, I was always really motivated, always liked medicine. My mom was a nurse. And so even because I have an art background as well too. And as in elementary school, I would, write book reports. Other kids were writing book reports on American Indians. I'd write book reports on blood plasma and hematomas, and I'd actually draw the blood cells and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so I always loved medicine. But fast forward, what happened was that senior year in high school, in the summertime, right before school started, I had my first heart attack from a meth overdose. I had other health problems too.
How old were you when you had a heart attack?
18.
Oh my goodness.
So the doctor said the mistake, well, inside my ego self, the ego's being 18 years old, I overheard the doctor telling my dad outside the curtain in the ER that I should have died, but because of my age, I survived it, but I got a hold of some bad stuff. And I was thinking to myself, well, I've gotten stuff that's never gotten me off before, but nothing's ever done this, right? And And so I used again a few months later, had another heart attack, but because of all the shame I had surrounding the addiction, I didn't call 911, and I was willing to die that day. Luckily I didn't. And so I woke up. It was kind of like my wake up call. So I put myself into Taekwondo as a means to change my path. And because I realized I was going to end up dead, in prison, or both. And so I started competing right away. And one night before a match, I was kicked accidentally in the back and almost paralyzed from the waist down. Doctors were saying at the time that if I moved the wrong way, I might not walk. I could sever that nerve, not have sex again, those kinds of things. So it led me to a doctor who had a therapist working for her, and he was a martial artist, and he started talking about Qi. Now, this is over 30 years ago. Nobody was really talking about Qigong in the US back then. Very little about Tai Chi and Kung Fu because of Bruce Lee, right? But I was 19 now. I was like, yeah, right. The closest thing to Qi that I'm going to get is like Cheez-Its or Cheese Whiz, because there's no Qi. What is Qi, right? And so I took a chance, and he was teaching these classes, and there's only 2 other women in the class, and they're, I thought at first as a Qi dud because I didn't feel anything, and they were talking about, oh, I'm feeling warm, I'm feeling tingling. I'm like, I don't feel nothing. All I do know is that after about 6 months, because I had other health problems too. I had severe digestive problems. I had severe chronic sinus infections. I lived on all kinds of medications, had all kinds of tests done. They couldn't figure out why if I ate an avocado or a salad, I'd be in the fetal position an hour or 2 later. Anyways, the reality showed up that about 6 months into these practices daily, those symptoms were gone. And so I thought to myself, wow, if a gentle movement in specific meditation, not just a mindfulness meditation, but a specific meditation could do this to me, there must be something to the medicine. And that's when I started studying classical Chinese medicine.
Did you, during that 6 months time, did you start to feel the Qi?
I mean, I felt I would get warmth and those kinds of things. And sometimes, like if we do that little trick, put the hands like this, you feel that little energy ball. But I wasn't feeling the energy for which the women in the class were talking about. It wasn't until later on I was doing a practice called the Microcosmic orbit meditation. And if you take the Qi, if you participate in the Qi Club, one of the regulations that we talk about is you place the tip of the tongue gently to the roof of the mouth as if saying the letter N, because you're connecting 2 major acupuncture vessels of the body. And then one night I felt that surge up the spine. And then after that, then all kinds of magical things started to happen.
Wow.
Or mystical things. Yeah.
I love it. Magical things. That's what I think, that's what Dolores was all about. She had so many magical things happen to her, and magical things brought me to her, and my whole life turned into some crazy things. And you know what? I was an artist before then.
Oh.
Wow.
I mean, I still am a painter and a photographer, but that was my focus was that. So I find that really interesting. Okay. So Parisa, when did you come into the picture? How did you guys?
How did we meet? Well, what's funny is, so right before I met Chris, I was managing a studio in Los Gatos, California, Pilates studio. And I was at a local junior college studying massage therapy. And one of the massage instructors at it was De Anza College in Cupertino, he was also a Qigong person who Chris and this professor studied together.
Years ago, yeah.
Years ago. And so I started taking some of those classes. Okay. And then parallel to that, I had just had like a sad breakup. And one of our clients, Lori Kirk, we had these private sessions, 2 specific sessions where we kind of unpacked like what it means to find your soulmate, and does it exist, and is there such a thing? I had got this book, The Soulmate Secret by Ariel Ford, was kind of sharing some of the practices and exercises I was going through in that book. And then a week later, she came back in, and she had gone into Chris's office. He was subleasing to another massage person who was randomly full circle. That same massage person knew the same professor that I was dating him. This guy was a little bit promiscuous. And so then she said, I know it. I got your soulmate for you. His name is Chris Shelton. She's like, he's a Qigong. He helped me with my shoulder. You know, I had all this sadness from the death of my parents. He helped me with my shoulder. He's so cool. You just love, he just won this championship. He had this big trophy. So she got the flash. But then she goes on to say, oh, as a side note, he does have several kids and maybe some baby mama drama. And so me, 29 years old, I'm like, me and my cat, I'm like, okay, red flag. No, that's not going to work, right? So I instantly poo-pooed it. Then fast forward like a month later, what happened was I got fired from that position at that studio. And that was like really devastating for me because it was my teacher and my mentor that I looked up to. She had brought me into the industry, but it was just like at this point, and that can happen sometimes, where the student grows so much comes to a certain level, and then the teacher becomes threatened, and then you're done. So that's what was happening there. Yeah. But it was actually such a blessing because as a result of that, I had found Chris's card, and Lori had even called Chris and said, hey, my friend Parisa is going to call you. And so I found his card and I was like, okay, well, let's see, where can I move my practice to? Then as a result of that, it wasn't romantic at all with the phone call.
No, because I had 2 treatment rooms. Yeah. And then I had a small classroom space for which I taught Qigong and Tai Chi, and then specialty classes. And so for myself, you know, I was thinking, well, let's get together for lunch or an early dinner. I'll show you the studio, and then we could talk about, because you want to know more about what it is that I did.
Right.
And so I was thinking business meeting.
Yeah, so was I. Yeah. So and that was July 4th, July 5th, the day after 4th of July, July 5th, 2010. And we arranged a dinner meeting, which is kind of random. We think about that. We're like, dinner meeting. But we literally been together ever since that day.
Yeah, she was cute because she walked in. I was in my office. I was in my treatment room, and she walked in with slacks. She actually had a resume in her hand, you know, and it's like, you know, the Bugs Bunny cartoons. I was like, Bluga! And so we went to this place called a Keys in downtown Willow Glen, and closed down the place. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I said, I still haven't seen that resume, but you got the job.
I love it. I really, really love it. Thank you so much for sharing that story. Well, you obviously both felt the energy of the other, and the rest, as they say, is history. Right. And you've become quite the team in your Qi Club. You know, it's just so friendly and inviting. And part of that is because of the way that you treat each other. And the way that you interact with each other, and your light approach to it all. You know, it's fun and it's kind of funny, and there's puppets. I'll just say that to those who may be watching. There's puppets involved, and I remember going, "There's puppets here." Okay, really, Dolores? What, Dolores? I mean, the whole thing's Are you sure you've taken me to the right people? But you know, as a quantum healer and as somebody who's been doing energy work myself, I started with Reiki in 2000, not at all intending to assist anyone else, just trying to get out of my own pain cycle and inability to have traditional, conventional Western medicine helped me because it failed utterly. When you were talking about on the other side of the curtain, I remember a moment in my own life with that, being on the other side of the curtain, where I was having kind of like seizures and withdrawal symptoms from a medication that I was put on to try to break my pain cycle. And it was tiny doses of antidepressant. It's a theory that you take a tiny dose of antidepressants, certain kinds, and it'll break your pain cycle. And for me, it was an utter failure. They actually said you might gain weight with this, you might sleep a lot. So of course, I lost 20 pounds. I quit sleeping, and the thing still didn't work for my pain. Wow. And I was titrating off of it, and then my body just basically went haywire. And my husband had taken me to the emergency room, and the doctor did the thing, closed the curtain, standing right there, right outside of the curtain, and said to my husband, she must be on something because this drug doesn't do that. And I'm like, I can hear you. Right? I mean, the whole thing was kind of insane. But after that, I just kind of went, I'm done with you people. You can't help me. And not long after that, I found Reiki and I started that journey of, let's look at this differently because the people in the white coats aren't helping me at all. Yeah. And I think it's important for all of us, even if we're not having a health crisis, to really consider the energetics that go behind everything. And of course, that was all Dolores Cannon and what quantum healing is all about. But as I was thinking about this yearly event and interested in asking you both to chat with me, I was really interested in this because, addiction, and you, Chris, you've offhandedly talked about your addiction a little bit more with me right now too. I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that in depth and why, because the last 2 years have been so challenging to so many people, and people who'd had addiction, let's say issues, some of them have really fallen into them harder. Yeah. And I thought you might address Qigong and how they can help like that, and how actually it helps. How actually does it help?
Yeah. So when we look at addiction, and Parisa and I are really, we juggle quite a bit. Besides the Qi Club, and we have a Qigong teacher training. I see patients in clinic. I have my second book coming out. I just was in the recording studio recording more Qigong meditations. We have classes. We have government classes that we teach for the health hospital systems. And we're also clinical directors for the Special Olympics. So there's a lot going on. And yeah, so we got to see, because of the government contracts, we actually got to see the real numbers of relapse, the increase of spousal abuse, the increase of child abuse, the increase of suicides because of the situation that was, that was going on. And so when you look at addiction itself and how Qigong can help, most people that relapse, the number one thing for addiction, people that are addicts, is resentments. Resentments will be the biggest trigger for relapse. And the fourth step, sometimes when a patient comes in, because we deal with things on the mental emotional level. So they're coming in with a physical disease a lot of times, but it roots back to emotional trauma. And a lot of people don't know that there's different emotions that actually get stuck in different internal organs of the body and manifest as disease, And so like the liver, so let's just talk about alcohol, for example. So we know that the liver attacks the pancreas, attacks the liver, attacks the kidneys. But the liver is affected by the negative emotions of anger, frustration, hate, old anger, and believe it or not, somebody being way too controlling also will affect the liver and show up as disease. So when we talk about depression, when a patient comes in, I don't treat the brain. What happens is I treat the liver blood, which affects the heart blood, which then affects the mind. So it's a different way of looking at the physiology of the body. And so, yeah, so unfortunately, yes, and the deaths that they're not talking about from relapse during the pandemic is quite startling. And I think we're coming into Mental Health Month. Next month, is it March? May? Yeah, we're coming up into, we'll come back around here. But anyways, Qigong, what it does is it gives you the tools in order to deal with the old angers and the resentments. And so going back to the patient, so sometimes when the patient comes in, even if, as far as I know, they're not an addict, they may be an addict to what Richard Rohr would call stinking thinking, but I'll give them the fourth step. And the fourth step is, let's look at your resentments. Let's look at your fears. Let's look at your sexual misconducts, and then acknowledge that with God, your higher self, whatever, the universe, whatever you want to call it, and then share that with God and somebody else, because that's where the healing begins. And so, anyways, so even patients that come in that I don't think that they have an addictive or use substances to medicate, self-medicate, I will give this 4-step because everybody should do it. Everybody should do that inventory to get into what's going on. And so what happens with Qigong is that it's almost like therapy in a way, because we want you to think of and relive the trauma. What had happened, how did it affect you? What was the environment like? Were there any sounds, any smells? But when you do the movement or the healing sound associated with, let's say, anger or resentment, and you connect to the organ for which that emotions is affecting, and the color that is also associated with the internal organ, guess what? That releases the vibration, which then heals the trauma. So unlike conventional therapy, sometimes where you go in, this is from my own experience, and you rehash, old things, right? And it's kind of like they pick off the scab, but I leave there and I'm like, oh God, I feel worse than what I did when I first came in. This, we want you to pick off the scab, but by doing the specific movement, making the mindfulness connection or the healing sound associated, then you heal the vibration, you heal the trauma.
What's that healing sound we're hearing right now?
Oh boy.
Exactly. I know.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I was just going to clarify one thing. Should I close the window or are we good?
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
In the work that I've done with Dolores, and we don't discount any of those things. It's like, okay,
That's true.
anything that comes in that gets noticed, it comes in and gets noticed for a reason. So I think that's really interesting about that, because that was like a backup beat, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think it was a Geek Squad. Yeah, the Geek Squad. They were backing up.
So isn't that interesting? Are you gonna? So nothing. I don't believe in any kind of coincidence at all.
Yeah.
I absolutely don't believe it. So even here, the energy of the backup beat came in, which is what's backing up. Well, backing up through time. Maybe looking at these traumas to then release them or whatever. I mean, that's just the way my mind works.
I like that. And also I did want to back up for a sec because and clarify one point, which is that in Qigong, there's kind of 2 pathways. One is the self-regulating practice, which is what we do in the Qi Club and a lot of the videos on YouTube. It's kind of like yoga and Tai Chi, but easier to do and really specifically focused on clearing emotions, negative emotions, and accessing the positive virtues. And then the other pathway is the medical Qigong, which is like administering the Qi medicine, focusing on specific acupoints throughout the body in order to clear the channels and release physical pain. And so we do both of those in our practice. So that's just to clarify that, because Chris kind of was bouncing back and forth between those 2 concepts, but there's the self-regulating that can be done on your own and or in a group, and then the medical, which is kind of like acupuncture, but without needles. We use our hands instead.
Yeah, but I'm not, and that's what's brought me into Los Angeles. We're from the San Francisco Bay Area, we're from San Jose. We still have the clinical practice up there, and I think it was 11 years ago, my friend down, we became friends. He's a Hollywood physique expert, Eric the trainer. At the time I was training with Kung Lee's fight team, and Kung Lee is a professional UFC fighter, Vietnamese fighter, fought with, the style was Sancho, and is really like an icon for the Vietnamese community. Anyways, he was my fight coach, he was my patient, and also became a friend.
He was in our wedding.
He was on our wedding, yes. And I did a couple of amateur fights underneath him just for fun. So anyways, he got me all kinds of publicity up there that I couldn't even pay for, like Showtime, NBC Sports. The UFC has been in the office twice. The TV show Celebrity Sweat's been up there. Vietnamese television's been. So anyways, he was friends with this gentleman down here named Eric the trainer. And Eric the trainer, he said, Chris, he goes, Kung told me about what you do. I want to meet you. And Parisa and I happened to be flying down to do a fundraiser with Robert Downey Jr. And so we met near LAX. He said, Chris, Kung told me what you're doing up there in the Bay Area. Nobody's doing this in LA. I said, oh, come on, Eric. There's millions of people. It's LA,
Hollywood.
Millions of people, right? He goes, no, I know the who's who. And at the time I thought he was full of it because so many people say that, but he really does. He really does know the who's who. And so you'll see that. And so the reason why we're here is for the next stage of the career to help more people, which is my own TV show. Because the show is about what I do in clinic, and because the success rate is so high. So when she says medical Qigong, I kind of cringe at it, because if you did a web search of medical Qigong, chances are you're going to have some white guy with a cloak and a Fu Manchu waving his hands over people. I'm not saying that doesn't work, and it works for some people. But I want to see results, and I want repeated results, and I want to give the patients the tools necessary to take care of themselves, because like she said, I came with 4 kids, 2 ex-wives, and a partridge in a pear tree. I need followers on Instagram. I don't need any other followers. You know, I want to empower you. I want to empower people to understand how their body functions and how it works in order to heal themselves. So that's why we're here. And that's the difference. So my training besides Qigong then was, I did a 2.5-year private tutorialship in Tong style acupuncture with the woman, Esther Su, whose license was the first one in the state of California. And I was lucky enough to have this hand holding. She really guided me through not only Tong style acupuncture, but the philosophy around it, the spiritual philosophy around it, the emotional, mental philosophy around it. And so after studying with her, I was like, oh, wow, guess what? I was already sensitive to energy now at this point. I could hit some of these Tong points and do the same thing that the needle is doing while I'm doing other things like cupping, moxa, bushin, gua sha, whatever that's legal within my scope of practice, and get the same or better results. And what's even cooler about it is that I could teach this to other people.
Oh, I love it. One of the first things I heard you say when Dolores had me look you up was, and I kind of did it like, you know, like bibliomancy. I just went like this and went, I'm going to watch that YouTube. And it was a fairly older one. I mean, it was from several years ago. It wasn't the latest one. You know, I know not to do that. And I just went, okay, that one. And one of the first things you talked about was the practical application of Qigong. And I went, that's my guy, because with Dolores's work, it can be so woo-woo and it can be so far out there. And even though I run a community, I've got 700 quantum healers in my community, and we can be pretty far out there as far as stories and realms and things that happen and all that stuff. But when it comes right down to it, for me personally, the stories are the cherry on top or the icing on the cake. For me, it's the practical applications.
Exactly.
As nice and cool as it is to talk about that dimension or that planet or whatever, the thing that I come back to is I want to feel good in my body. I want to have healthy relationships with my family and others, and I want to walk in my own power. And in my own integrity and in my own truth, going, into the world. And to do that, you need sort of a self-care thing. Yes. And we all are busy. You really are busy. I am too, trying to juggle a lot of things. But one of the things that I did, and I did so like within minutes of Dolores's hint to me and me finding you and seeing that, I think it was like an 8-year-old video. I mean, it was the kind of YouTube that was like the different format. It was like square and it was old, and it was an older one. And I went, well, that's my person. I loved this idea of live connection with other people because these last 2 years with the big T, they trying to keep us from that, we necessarily need to do more connecting in this way. But I do this quantum healing work online, and I do connect with others online. But I thought I'm gonna get comfortable with Qigong with others in a group online. And I couldn't be more pleased with that, because, I actually, my husband helps me run some of the back stuff of my business. And I just went in there and went, okay, this is, that charge on the account. That's my monthly membership for this thing that I'm doing. And it's for self-healing, and it's also for research. And also, and I actually made him do this. I was like, you have to change all of my appointments now that might come up with that. And except for a few that because of time zones, they just couldn't, or some other things that I just couldn't. But any appointment that it could have been changed months in advance, I got changed, and I spend those days with you, and I love them so much. Here's how much I love them. Yesterday was Friday, and it's 10 o'clock at my time that we get together, and I ran into my little spot. I couldn't do it outside because we have ice on the ground, but I ran into my little spot, and I didn't realize it wasn't Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. It was Friday, and I know you have the recordings, and we did that anyway, but I was really like, missed yesterday.
I missed you too. I love seeing you on there, and then the tree and the blackbird. Remember the bird the other day?
Oh my gosh, it wasn't just a bird. It was an entire flock of blackbirds, and we had a really warm day, and I took my truck out in the middle of the hayfield. We live on a big spot of land here in rural Kansas. I'm literally in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
I'm literally, if you were to take a pencil and try to pick in Kansas and kind of go, this seems to be the exact middle of the entire shebang. That's where we live. And I took myself out there, and I'd seen these blackbirds, and they'd come. I mean, they do this, but they've really been here this year. And I took myself to a place that was relatively quiet, and where the light worked, and where the wind wasn't too much of anything. And right as I'm setting everything up and getting my hotspot on my phone to make my laptop work so that I could see all of this, this flock of these blackbirds they're so noisy, and they do this congregation and this other thing. They're not the murmuring starlings, but they are the blackbirds, and they landed in that tree, and they were very, very noisy. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. And then I got it all set up, and you had a loon sound playing.
The loon song, yes.
I turned it up. This is like your waiting music, right? Your waiting
exactly.
music before you get going on the Qigong class, which is a half hour of lovely Qigong. And as soon as the loon went, all of the blackbirds, they literally they went. They quieted down, and I'm looking up there. I swear they're looking over at me, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And so much it was just amazing. And then you had a phoenix song, and then it was really crazy. And I had my feet right on the ground, and I was so loving everything about it. And the most amazing thing is, after about, not long after tossing the stone, they kind of took off, and I didn't think any more about it till we got to the end of our time together. And those birds, not only did they return, they buzzed me. They came down and went, yeah. I almost was
wow.
Amazing.
They blessed you.
Well, here, again, I don't believe in coincidences. This was an energy thing. And there's a lot with birds and Dolores and birds. There's a lot going on there too. And I just found that astonishing. I was so psyched about that. And I'm also psyched about the idea of the connecting of the energy, because you touch your feet to the ground. Obviously, often that's inside. But isn't it more powerful if you can manage it to do this outside?
Absolutely.
Completely. Yeah. Connecting with your environment.
Yeah.
I used to
do classes outside all the time.
Yeah. There's a meditation that I was teaching called Connecting with Nature meditation, because different trees actually connect to different internal organs of the body and different acupuncture meridians of the body. So this could go really deep. It depends on how far down the rabbit hole.
Wait. What's the elm? You have to tell me right now. What's the elm?
The elm is the spleen, lung, and kidneys. So
really?
Oh man, I have an elm that's been talking to me on the property, and the spleen thing really fits, Chris. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we would connect.
That's on our list
to record, but so we would connect with the trees, not to sound too weird or anything, but you actually ask.
You can do that here.
Weird meaning supernatural.
Supernatural.
Yeah.
So you actually ask the tree permission. Is it okay to connect with you, right? Is it okay to run energy through you, right? And you get a sense, right? It's not like, no, Bob, you cannot run energy through me today, right? It's more.
They almost always say yes.
Yeah. So So anyways, and then you run this energy. So yeah, so being outside, being barefooted, connecting with the earth is really, really powerful. And because we're are affected by our environment, and talking about energy and talking about Chinese medicine and talking about the craziness that's gone on, you know, Chinese medicine, the foundation of it, Qigong was the foundation. Then came acupuncture. Thousands of years ago, beings were so connected to nature that they understood how disease would actually show up when seasons were out of season, for example. So there's a clinical textbook called The Yellow Emperor's Classic of Difficulties, also referred to as the Su Wen. In that book, the Yellow Emperor talks about the various plagues and viruses that show up when things are out of sorts, and then the deaths that occur as a result, like 2 seasons later or whatever. So Chinese medicine was not based upon, or acupuncture was not based upon fixing migraines and menstrual problems. It was combating these plagues because hundreds of thousands or millions of people were dying. So the herbal formulas that we have and stuff like that were all designed, you know, for this very thing. So when we talk about nature itself, it's also what we're doing to the forests and clear cutting the forests, right? And the rainforest, right? How does that affect our environment energetically as well too, right? And so we really want to pay attention to what is in our environment, preserve and take care of it, connect with it, and also being in alignment with our own integrity, our own truth of how can I be of better service to the whole, that we're not just the separate individual entity, not connected. Because if you talk about quantum realm, then in the quantum realm, we know that everything is interconnected. So your thought processes, you know, one of the things I love about Eckhart Tolle is Eckhart Tolle says, you know, to be a watchful observer over your mind. And so, yeah, so your thought process is also a vibration, right? And that vibration radiates outward. And this is what I was telling some of my clients that were getting caught up on certain news shows or
so in the fear porn.
Fear porn. Yeah. You know, I say, well, number one, we're going to put you on a fear porn diet. Number one,
get off Facebook.
we're going to give you some Qigong practices, but I want you to, even if you are inside your home, I want you to be aware of what you're thinking about.
Yes.
Because those riots or whatever else is going on somewhere else in the world, if you're thinking at the same vibrational level, you are further contributing to that vibration. That's how interconnected we are. But if we think about love and gratitude and how we can support one another and how we could develop this attitude of tolerance, of understanding, then we change the vibration, right, in a positive way.
There's a bunch of sparkles that just happened above my keyboard as you were saying that. I absolutely agree. I want to harken back a moment to the tree thing for a moment, because my husband, who's he knows about this. He's even taken a lot of the training, quantum healers kind of stuff, but he's not into it as much as I am. He's not as deeply involved. And he's been working the land as we've been out here, and he would come in and he would sometimes be bloodied and bruised doing some clearing. And I asked him once, I said, well, you know, are you asking permission of the trees about, because we'd like walking paths and some other things, and that includes clearing out some and trimming others. And I remember he sort of giggled at me, and he'd come in, you know, and there'd be big slashes and gashes on him and other things like that. And he'd talk about how he's going through it, and one would whip him, you know, going across the path. I said, you should try asking. And he didn't say anything, but he kind of just looked at me sideways. But it took him a little while, but later he told me that he religiously now asks, and it's just not a problem anymore.
Oh, great.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's
Just
beautiful.
asking permission.
It is, yeah.
That's beautiful.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and you talk about the practicality of things. You know, there's a time and place for the mysticism. The style of Qigong I teach is that there's 3 schools. There's the medical school, which is the style that we're teaching. There's the martial arts school, which I used to compete and fight with Tai Chi in tournaments. And then the spiritual school. The spiritual school isn't an ism necessarily, like Taoism or whatever. It's the understanding that your consciousness, you're responsible for being aware of the ego self and how that shows up right? And then how, what, you know, like what we talk about, what we think about, we bring about, but then how we could harmonize our internal being to harmonize with everything else there, right? What appears to be out there, right? And that's what it's about. And so what I tell people is that the style of Qigong that we're teaching, which is based upon the 5-element school, doesn't matter what your spiritual or religious belief structure is. The more that you practice, the more that you clear out these blockages inside your body, and the more you're able to get these organs to function properly, your vibration naturally increases. So no matter what religious or spiritual structure that you have, it further contributes to that personal development. And so when one talks about talking to God or communicating with God, to me what that is that you get to the place of quietude and centeredness enough that you develop an all-knowingness. And this all-knowingness then permeates through you, right? Because now that vibration, because something of that magnitude that's indescribable, right, is such a refined vibration. And most humans operate at the very coarse vibration. So the more that you refine yourself, hence the name of my book, Qigong for Self-Refinement, which we're going to change the name of, by the way, because not many people are doing a Google search for self-refinement. But anyways, you can't help but to refine. So as you get rid of the physical ailments, as you harmonize the mental emotional state, get back into balance, then your spiritual development also increases. And then this is where the mysticism naturally will come in on its own. It'll naturally come in.
Internal alchemy.
Yes.
You've got another book coming, but I have two questions about your refinement book that now is going to have another name. But so one is, is there a way to get me personally or anybody listening a signed copy of that book? Is there a way to do that?
Oh, beautiful. Sure.
For conducting this interview today, Candace, we'll send you out a copy.
Yes.
Yeah.
A signed copy. Yes.
And then for anyone else, you can go to sheltonqigong.com and you can buy the book there. It's also on Amazon, but the Amazon version is the first edition, whereas we produced a second edition that's even better.
Of course.
And then we're going to be creating a third edition.
Sign it, and then you can sign it.
Too.
Yes,
oh yeah, let's see what it looks like. Oh, that's beautiful. Cover. Okay, and here's the next question about that book. So don't put it up too fast.
Okay.
Yeah, you can hold. I noticed it has 144 pages. At least that's what it said when I looked up some.
This one says 123.
That's the second one?
Yeah.
Did you refine it down?
No, I think the book design is a little bit bigger.
Oh,
I see.
Because this is
your original offering was 144, and that is sort of a number that is all over my roadmap.
Interesting.
In the last year, or 2 years actually. There's a lot of numbers that show up in my life and repetitive numbers, but 144 is a big marker for me. So your initial creation did have that. I didn't know, is that completely on accident or
it was by accident. Yeah.
Sometimes on the YouTube videos I manage the numbers.
Oh, but then again too, nothing is a coincidence.
That's right.
And you're working on a second book, this about lower back pain.
This is about the whole spine, from the cervical, from the neck all the way down. Excuse me. And I've been working on this book for about 7 years now. We've gone through 2 editors.
3.
Well, 3. The third one just finished. She was a line editor. But originally the book was supposed to be broken up into 3 parts. It was supposed to be common ailments and how to fix it yourself, like constipation, migraine, stuff like that. All the fun stuff.
I like how you started with constipation. Okay.
And then the second part of the book, was supposed to be on back problems, because of all the diseases that I see in clinic, back issues are number 1. Third part of the book was going to be on more difficult conditions like trigenital facial neuralgia, atrial AFib, those types of conditions. And then when we got to the second editor, she's like, Chris, you're going to end up with a clinical, like a textbook. And I don't want a textbook.
It was going to be like 800 pages.
Yeah. And I don't want a textbook. I want something, the information that I've been able to download and be able to share with people I want them to be able to access it. So the second book is on how to fix all back from the cervical, neck, mid back to the lower lumbar. And going back to the mental emotional state, every single neck injury or frozen shoulder injury that I've seen, unless you're doing jiu-jitsu and someone popped your shoulder out, or you're a pitcher, you popped your shoulder out, every single neck or frozen shoulder issue comes back to emotions of the heart. Every single one. And I'll give you an example. This gentleman, Mike Kroger, who is the guitarist for Nickelback, he had cervical arthritis, and he did a testimonial for me on YouTube. And otherwise, I would not be saying his name right now.
Sure, HIPAA, come on.
Exactly.
So anyways, he's funny because on the interview, he said that Chris Shelton got rid of my arthritis in 30 minutes. And what had happened was that he flew into San Jose, and I said to Mike, I said, you know, what 2 years ago or 3 years ago when this neck pain started showing up, what was going on in your life? And he said, well, you know, Chris, I think it's the stress of being on tour, way I hold my guitar on stage, you know, or maybe my mattress. And then he paused and thought about it. He said, you know what was funny is about you saying that is 2 weeks before the pain showed up, my horse died. So his horse died, he took care of business. And then one day his body said, guess what? You pretend like that didn't hurt you, but it did. And so this is how, so these practices, and in the book, what it's doing is it's talking about the environment, the mental, emotional state. We're also looking at food, right? And then how to remedy it, how to fix it yourself. Because if you understand the underlying etiology in disease, then you're like, oh, this can be transformed, right?
Yeah.
And our DNA wants to be healthy. Our DNA does not want us to be sick.
Yeah.
And so we just teach you, and this book is going to teach you how to unlock that, so you can unlock the sciatica, the lumbar stenosis, whatever it is.
Well, I'm interested in that for all kinds of reasons. In my own offering to the world, my method that I call Beyond Quantum Healing, it's kind of a permission slip, as it were, to use some of the foundational approaches of what Dolores called QHHT or past life regression, but to give a permission slip to add anything else that may work. And I'm always interested in expanding and learning. And so I'm really interested in the practical applications as a practitioner for someone else, beyond even like for myself, within the umbrella of quantum healing that I call BQH. But in the time we have left, I actually want to touch on, you know, when I screwed up my courage to ask whether or not you would want to be interviewed for our event. And I contacted Parisa and I told her a little bit about myself and that I used to work with Dolores Cannon.
It's amazing.
You responded so quickly, like almost immediately, I think, or at least it seemed that
right
way.
away.
And then Dolores was over here and she's like, bah, ha, ha, ha. See, I told you they were the right people. Because you told me, Parisa, you're taking her class.
I took the QHHT level 1, and I'm doing like the internship hours. And so working through that. And it's so funny because when I watched Dolores, a lot of like her attitude and disposition on how she treats or works with clients is very much in alignment with Mr. Chris.
Yeah.
It's so funny because both of them, they're like, no, we don't want people to keep coming back. We don't want to create this codependent relationship. That's why she would only see people one time towards the end. She would only, and she would have a waiting list 4 years out. And then the other thing is there was this one, remember she had this one towards the end of the lessons.
Where the lady walked on stage.
This lady came up onto stage and she was like, she was like, I am so-and-so from this planet. And then Dolores was like,
stop it.
You get out. She's like, there is no space. You stop this right now. And both Chris and I were like, damn, boss lady. She just like came in there. She's like, we do not.
I was in the audience.
Were you really?
Well, yeah. I mean, I assisted Dolores in all of her live classes for years. So I remember that vividly.
Vivid.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because that woman completely freaked out a whole bunch of people and Dolores just wasn't having it.
Good for her.
And she just put a pin right in it and just went, just stop that right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's my Dolores. Oh my God, do I miss her.
loved it. We were like
Yeah.
so impressed by that because
Yeah.
it was like, no, there's not, this is not
about
what
you.
we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
Yeah.
It's not about you. And, Parisa signs up for a lot of online workshops and stuff like that.
I'm a self-development junkie.
And so I'm very harsh critic on some of the stuff. And when she first started, we're driving back and forth to Los Angeles, and we're listening to Dolores's book, I Walked with Jesus, I believe it was called.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, wow, like there's no way that she could have made this stuff up. And that's where I gained the respect for me. And then when Parisa started taking her course or whatever, the frankness and just the transparency, that's what I like, because that's how I am with my patients. I will not hesitate. I mean, when we first got together, Parisa wanted me to wear a lab coat and a name tag, a doctor's coat. And I was like, me wearing a freaking lab coat and a name tag? Can you imagine? So
well, just no t-shirts with bad words on it sometimes. I'm like, okay.
So anyways, no, like I want to be approachable to people, That's why I share the old story so freely with people, is because it has to be approachable. I'm not somebody that's up on I don't want to be put on a pedestal. I'm here with you. The only difference is that I have been utilizing these practices to help with my own trauma. And on a side note, on when Parisa and I met, I had another dysfunctional relationship after the second marriage. And after that, I realized like, oh shoot, I'm drawn in crazy, but there's something really crazy about me. Mm-hmm. And so I dove into NLP, with neuro-linguistic programming. Initially, I was diving into NLP because I fought a fight in the heavyweight division. I lost the fight. I went all 3 rounds, but psychologically, I was going to work through that. But really what it came down to is why I used to be very angry, very controlling, non-trusting. And so if Parisa and I would have met anytime sooner, energetically, it probably would not have worked, because energetically, I was not at that place. But so I did about 2.5 years at a time. I was raising the 4 kids. I was a single dad, raising the 4 kids, running the business and fighting, and cultivating myself more. And then before she showed up.
Oh my gosh, props to you. That's, I thank you for sharing that part. There's, a lot of women do that. Not a lot of men do.
That's right.
Amazing. I mean, truly amazing.
Yeah.
I'm a unicorn.
I'm a very active father.
Very involved.
Well,
a side note, our 16-year-old, she's a dancer. And what happens is that she came to me to dance her ballet lace.
No, to sew the toe shoes. You have to sew the ribbons on the ballet shoes.
Yeah.
And out of all the different parents and options, she was like, I want dad to do it.
Well, there's something quite sweet and symbolic and beautiful in that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. What a lovely way to come to a close of talking to you today. Remind everyone what you offer and where they can find it again here as we close up the time.
Okay, well, for more information and actually to download your free 5-element personality quiz, you can go to sheltonqigong.com and get that free quiz. And then if you're interested, if you're interested in joining the Qi Club, then you can go to the qiclub.com and sign up for that. And then if you want to take it one step further and join the teacher training, then go to qigongteachertraining.com as well. So those are the 3 websites.
Yes, and to come back full circle on the purpose of the TV show, I said for number 1 is to show people self-empowerment. But from the TV show, I'm hoping that people will want to come and study with me, because like I said, I can reproduce this in clinic. And I can only touch one soul at a time in clinic, right? And then that way the practitioners could go into their communities and help heal other people. So that's a bigger mission. That's
perfect. And yeah, that does bring us full circle, because I could just feel the integrity emanating from both of you from the very moment I met you. Well, thanks again for joining us today so much. And thank you all for watching. Even who's barking? What's that one's name?
That's Lulu.
Lulu.
One sec.
Thanks, Lulu, for being so quiet till now. And stay tuned to the next episode of Quantum Realm. Bye,
Yeah.
everyone.
Bye.
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 Thanks, Candace.
Bye.